Why is China so angry over UN report on Xinjiang? Hello everyone, I am Manas Srivastava and you are watching UPSC Essentials of the Indian Express, and it's time for the issue at a glance. Some international issues have to be understood from the perspective of past, present, and future. Today's issue over this United Nations report on Xinjiang and China's reaction over it is one such issue. So let us now understand what we are going to learn from this video. First of all, why is this issue in news? Secondly, where is Xinjiang and why is it important to China? Third, what prompted China's crackdown on minorities? Fourth, what is the basis of the UN accusations? Fifth, what has been China's response? And lastly, what will be the outcome for China? So you must have seen this issue covered in the explained section of the Indian Express. Now let's break down this issue into simpler points and understand step by step about this issue. So let's begin. Why is this issue in news? China has responded furiously to a United Nations report on alleged human rights abuses in its northwest Xinjiang region, targeting Uyghur and other Muslim ethnic minorities. The UN report has been in the works for years and was released despite Chinese efforts to delay or block it. Aware of how it could validate claims that more than 1 million ethnic minority members were forcibly sent to centers it says were for vocational training. You should know that those who were held, their relatives, and monitoring groups described them as prison-like re-education centers where inmates were forced to denounce Islam and their traditional culture while swearing a fidelity to the ruling Communist Party. The camps have been part of a widespread campaign of repression in Xinjiang, allegedly including involuntary sterilization of women, forced labor, the demolition of mosques and other religious sites, the separation of Muslim children from their families, and the harassment of minority members living abroad. Now let's come to a basic question, that where is Xinjiang and why is it important to China? Xinjiang is a vast but sparsely populated region of mountains, forests, and deserts in far northwestern China that borders Russia, Pakistan, and several Central Asian nations. You must have heard about this ancient Silk Road. Now, the ancient Silk Road ran through parts of it, and various nationalities and Chinese empires controlled its cities. And over the centuries, with the Communist Party taking complete control following its 1949 victory of the Chinese Civil War. Now, the importance of this region lies in the fact that this region contains a wealth of natural resources, including oil, gas, and rare earth minerals. But perhaps its most important value is a strategic buffer that extends China's influence westward. Also remember that while China and Russia have largely aligned their foreign policies in recent years, Xinjiang was one of the front line of their Cold War rivalry and remains important as an assertion of Chinese influence in Moscow's backyard. Now you must be wondering that what prompted China's crackdown on minorities. So this is our next question. Xinjiang's Uyghur, along with the closely related Kazakh, and Kyrgyz are predominantly Turkic Muslims who are culturally, religiously, and linguistically distinct from China's dominant Han ethnic group. So you have to remember these names like Uyghur, Kazakh, Kyrgyz. These are Turkic Muslims and the Han ethnic group. Repression under communist rule, particularly during the violent and xenophobic 1966 to 1976 cultural revolution, stirred deep animosity in Xinjiang towards the government, aggravated further by the migration of Han to the region and their domination of political and economic life. Uyghur established two short-lived independent governments in Xinjiang prior to the Communist Party's seizure of power. And the desire for self-rule endured and was nurtured by resentment against heavy-handed Chinese rule. A protest movement began in the 1990s and remained at a relatively low level until simmering anger exploded in a 2009 riot in the region's capital that left an estimated 200 people dead. More violence followed within Xinjiang and as far away as Beijing, prompting Chinese leader Xi Jinping to order a massive crackdown starting in 2014. Now let's come to the question that what is the basis for the United Nations accusation? Uyghur and others were sent into a vast network of fortified camps without legal due process. It remains unclear what criteria were used to determine if a person needed to be sent for what the authorities called retraining or de-radicalization. But those who showed religious tendencies, the well-educated and anyone with foreign connections were especially susceptible. Conditions in the camps have been described as overcrowded, unhygienic, with those inside forced to renounce their religion and culture and praise the and Communist Party. It is also said that harsh punishments are given to those who refuse to comply, and the length of sentences were indeterminate. While China says it has closed the camps, many of those held have since received lengthy prison terms within a system that remains overwhelmingly opaque. The US and others have labeled China's policies against Xinjiang minorities as genocide. Now let's look at the question that what has been China's response? China has always denied targeting Uyghur and others for their religion and culture, denouncing the accusation of a confection of lies by the West and saying its crackdown was aimed at quashing separatism, terrorism, and religious extremism. China has said camp attendance was voluntary and no human rights were abused, although internal Chinese documents have frequently contradicted such claims. Beijing has also cited carefully choreographed visits by journalists, diplomats, and most recently, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights as validating its claims. Some observers say the tide of criticism may have prompted Beijing to wind down the detentions earlier than planned to salvage its reputation among Muslim nations and in the developing world. In a note accompanying the UN report, China's diplomatic mission in Geneva registered its strong opposition to the finding, which it said ignored human rights achievement in Xinjiang and the damage caused by the terrorism and extremism to the population. To quote, based on the disinformation and lies fabricated by the anti-China forces and out of presumption of guilt, the so-called assessment distorts China's law, wantonly smears and slanders China, and interferes in China's internal affairs, the note said in part. And finally, now come to the question, what will be the outcome for China? China's authoritarian leaders have outwardly defied criticism for their policies in Xinjiang, but have been unsuccessful in thwarting international sanctions on officials who were involved and bans on cotton and other commodities from the region. The report's release come despite China's growing influence within the United Nations and its pressure campaign against critics in the human rights community. China has maintained its defiance and appears to believe its policies have been effective and should continue despite any cost to its international reputation. On Thursday, its foreign ministry scoffed at the UN report, saying it was, and I quote, orchestrated and produced by the US and some Western forces and is completely illegal and void. It is a patchwork of false information that serves as political tool for the US and other Western countries to strategically use Xinjiang to contain China. Unquote. So that was the issue of the week. To get more such videos, you must subscribe to the Indian Express. Also, by now you know that Indian Express's two important initiatives, UPSC Essentials and UPSC Key, will help you in your UPSC examination journey. So scan the QR code in the end of the video. And as I say, think smart, work hard, conquer your goal.